How about now? I just want to make sure you guys can hear me before I keep talking. Hey, okay, Megan says you guys can hear me. Megan and Joe are in the chat. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think about my comments on the books. I'm just gonna like quickly restart and be like, hey, let's talk about the Wrenchies first. It's super cool. One of the things I liked is that everyone sort of summarizes it in a different way. And they talk about these two characters. There's Sherwood, who is sort of like, I don't know, I guess he's the main character, but it's weird. It's a weird book. And they also talk about, what's his face? Millie, this guy. I can't remember his name. Hollis. His name is Hollis. But I don't really feel like I can talk about those guys as like the main characters in this book, because I feel the Wrenchies are the main characters and they're super cool and they really dominate it, and like they are the ones that like drew me in and made it interesting. So I'll just show you some cool stuff. So it begins with sort of this, where it's Sherwood and his brother Olson go into this cave, and this is like their literal and theoretical and metaphysical loss of innocence, where they're kids, they're just having fun, and then they go into this cave and they start seeing these like super creepy shadow men, and they battle them. And yeah, so that's sort of like how it begins, and then it goes, and you get sort of introduced to the Wrenchies, who are sort of this gang of kids who live in this sort of like post-apocalyptic world where there are only children. So here, I'll show you. So these guys are the Wrenchies. And they're super cool. So there's like this world that's made up of these gangs that are all sort of like, they all fighting the Shadow Men, but they all sort of like have like little dominance sort of spats, and they all sort of get together every once in a while and do parties and whatnot. But really, it's about survival. And there's this whole idea that when they become adults, when they reach adolescence, the Shadow Men come for them and take them. So like, there's only children, but like, how do like the children come about? I mean, I've explained that towards the end, but it is sort of weird. But I also really, really like these group of kids. It's really amazing how the creator manages to give them all sort of their own voice and their own sort of personality, and yet they're so distinctly like adolescent. They don't really know what's going on. They're all just sort of like doing what they do. And just the world creation in this, and the establishing shots that it has in this part of the book, where it's just these this desolate wasteland, and these kids within this desolate wasteland. So it's interesting. Yeah, so I thought it was like really interesting. The art's super pretty. Apparently this is like his first full color, or like he normally does stuff in just pencils and inks, but the colors are just amazing. Now this book isn't really for everybody. It does a lot of this like jumping back and forth, and like, yes, the main story is about these kids, the Wrenchies, and then they find this comic about the Wrenchies, and they're like, oh yeah, that inspired our name, but also it's sort of like this magical artifact, and it's got these other Wrenchies within it. Here, I'll show you these other Wrenchies. So basically, I'm not, like, you know what? I'm not going to try to summarize it. It's weird. There's some weird stuff that happens. I'll try to, I don't know. It's just impossible to summarize. because like all this stuff happens in the past, and they sort of hint to it at the beginning and sort of introduce it, and then this character Sherwood knows that he's gonna go crazy in his future and sees his future of like being evil, and then takes steps to create this comic book that's like magically imbued and like hides these adventures inside the comic book, and is like, oh, I'm gonna set it up so a sorcerer can come and open it and let these adventurers loose and save the world from my eventual like corruption of it. It's weird, but I really like it. There's a lot of like interesting themes. Yeah, okay, just to comment on some of the comments. So it is just one artist who does all the art. He might have gotten help on this one, but like when he talks about it, he says that he worked on it for like 5 years. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And it is super awesome artwork. Megan was the one that asked if it was one artist with all the duties. Yeah, so it was pretty cool, but it's also like really weird. And there's a bunch of traveling back and forth through time, and a bunch of like weird causal stuff where they're reading the comic within the comic, and then they release these characters from the comic that are like really, who are just regular people, but have been imbued with powers because they were hidden within a comic. I'll show you a panel where they talk about that, and it's just like really interesting. But it's also, it's not for the faint of heart. This isn't a book you would like if you can't really spend at least like an hour and sit down and get into it. You know, it's not, this isn't a casual reading experience. There's some really interesting themes about innocence and the place that like religion has in bringing us up, and also like this idea that, oh, you know, like when you're grown up you can do anything, you can be anybody. So like in the comic, you know, Sherwood, who's this sort of weird character, I don't know, it's weird, I keep saying that. Sherwood's this character at the beginning who's just a kid, and then he goes into this cave and he discovers these weird shadowsmen, and him and his brother spend a lot of time fighting them. And then he gets separated from his brother, and then he goes to space. He goes to space, and then he comes back and becomes a junior spy. And so this is all before he's like 20 or so, and then he goes to art school. I'm just gonna keep making weird faces where like things don't actually make sense, because they don't, but like I don't feel like it has to. And also, like, just because I don't fully understand it doesn't mean it's not fully understandable. But yeah, there's this whole idea of like, oh, you can be anything when you grow up in society that we're all sort of like, you know, raised with. And when you're a kid, when you're 11, you really truly believe it. Whereas as you grow up and as you see more of the world, you get more jaded. And so that's sort of what this character Sherwood goes through, because when he's a kid, he's already an adventurer. He's already like battling shadowsmen. When he grows up, he loses his brother. He loses his mission. He's just like an old washed up drunk who's got like no motivation, and like ends up sort of becoming this like living battery for the shadowsmen. So it's really interesting, but I also feel like the characters, the Wrenchies themselves, are really overlooked. This guy, Bance, he's super cool. And he sort of understands that the comic itself is like meta. He's the one that sort of finds it and is like, oh, there's some weird stuff going on here. This thing doesn't actually make sense. And that's when they figure out it's like imbued with magic and how to open it up. And then these other characters, Tad and Marcy, I'm little spoiler. So there's this part where like they can't get infected by these bugs, or because the bugs are like part of the Shadowsmen, and then they'll become the Shadowsmen, and nobody wants to become it, and that's sort of what happens when they grow up. So there's a part where like Tad's hand gets like infected, and just chops it off. Just, you know, because these are badass kids who live in a post-apocalyptic world where it's like either you kill the Shadowsmen or you become them. And even when you do kill a lot of them, eventually you will become them. And so, like, I don't know, like, it was really good, but between all the stuff with Sherwood and all the stuff with Hollis, and Hollis is the kid that lives next door and dresses up in the superhero suit and wears it every day and has all these, like, issues of, like, isolation and, like, nerdery, you know, typical stuff. We all grew up with that. And he's sort of drawn into this world through this magical amulet, and he's the one that ends up opening the magic within the comic book. It's weird. But it's really good, and it's really interesting, and it's got a lot of really cool things to say. My only problem, I don't know, not problem, criticism with this is that because of the way it jumps back and forth, and because of the fact that it's so meta, and also, I don't know, I feel like maybe even because there's, like, children gangs, a lot of people won't like it. They just won't give it a chance. They won't open up their minds to it. And that's a fact of life, is that, you know, like, a lot of people, if it doesn't fit in with their, like, movie outline, if it doesn't fit into, like, the rom-com or the drama or, like, the heartthrob or, like, whatever, they won't like it and they won't give it a chance. And I feel like a lot of people will pick up this book and put it down because of that. And I feel like it's a shame, because it's a really good book. And, like, I'm really glad I bought this one, because I'll read it again, because I know I didn't get everything there is to get from this book through that one read. Other than, oh my god, these characters are amazing. And this art is phenomenal. And the way this guy sets the scene is unbelievable. Okay, so that's me geeking out like you do. So yeah, that's sort of what I felt about the Wrenchies. I really liked it. And it's kind of a shame that this month there's not a lot of people to talk to me about it, because, like, I feel like if we had a lot of people that read it and had varied opinions, we could have, like, really talked about this one for, like, hours. But it's just me. Hey guys, book club. So, I'm just gonna move on and talk about Mythic. Boom. I got this super cool variant cover because my comic shop loves me. Mythic was cool. It was okay, but the thing is, like, it's sort of the same. It sort of has that same idea of, like, oh, it's not reality. It's fantasy. It takes place in this world where it's like, oh, it's a world quite like ours, except science isn't real. It's sort of a ruse, because magic is what makes the world go round. Woo! We talked about it in Pull this other show I do with Stadium Comics, and I thought it sounded really interesting, so I wanted to give it a shot, especially because it's sort of like got, like, a ragtag team of misfits who are the Mythics, who sort of, like, deal with what happens when the magic doesn't work and they have to go and fix it. Hey, Joseph Bonsu. I think we just call you Joe most of the time. He's talking to us in the chat. I'm just saying hello back. What up, guy? This is what happens when you leave me alone with a chat room full of people saying hi to me. I'll just constantly say hi to them. But yeah, Mythic was okay. It seems like the kind of thing that would be really good if we had a bunch of issues out of it, but also, like, when you're reading it in comparison to something that actually is super messed up and has super cool magic, it falls a little flat. I didn't know Wrenchies would be so good. It's so weird and interesting, and that this one would be really sort of boring in comparison. But here, let's look at some images from the comic, because I'm super underselling it, but it was entertaining. So the issue starts off, and we're meeting this guy, and he's sort of like the phone repair guy, and he's, like, just, you know, sort of called in, and then he sees this weird shit, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's weird. And then this happens. Where it's like, oh, that wasn't actually an old lady, it's a crazy mythical monster. And so he fights it, and that's how he sort of gets introduced to the rest of the team, and the team recruits him. And then, you know, they go off on a mission, and it sort of stops halfway through where they establish the problem, which is like, oh, you know, like there's a drought in this area, and they're like, oh, well, it's because your sky and your mountains aren't fucking, and it's like, okay. And then the main guy, Watterson, who's like, I guess the team leader, he's like, okay, hit me in the face, new guy, and the new guy hits him in the face, and then he becomes a sort of like weird monster. And then that's how the issue ends. Cliffhanger! Lots of issues end on cliffhangers. And, I mean, I guess it sells more comics, but it's also like, yeah, I'm not a huge fan. But, I mean, it was interesting. It's sort of a thing that'll be like, it'll be good when there's a bunch of issues out and it becomes a trade and I can just pick it up in the library. And it does seem like something that a more casual reader who is into mythical stuff would like, but isn't really into, like, metaphysically examining their entire existence. Yeah, it's nuts. As Megan Carter says in the comments, it's nuts, man. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Hey, is Joe joining in our video chat? I'm gonna throw on my headphones so there isn't a feedback. But why don't you? Did you read these books?
Do you know what's funny? I'm so sorry. I was so busy with Anime North that I couldn't get a chance to get to read them, but I was listening to whatchamacallit. I was watching the podcast, and now I want to read the Wrenchies.
It's really good. It's really weird, but it's really good.
It's cool because it sounds like it reminds me of, like, you know, a Lord of the Flies / Mad Max type of deal. And I've always been a fan. Well, I'm always been a fan of like the post-apocalyptic type of tales. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really like it because there's also a lot that relates to like our present day situation, and also this whole idea of like Sherwood becoming a comic book artist so that he can express himself, and then, you know, obviously it's a comic book artist writing about this guy becoming a comic book artist and sort of the stuff that goes on. So I thought that was really interesting.
Within a story type of deal. Mind-blowing.
Yeah. So you have to read it. It's really good.
Okay. The Wrenchies. I'm going to think it down. I'm writing this down.
Cool. And like the Mythic was okay. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard with first issues because I want to do a graphic novel because graphic novels are great. But I also want to do a first issue because people should buy and read first issues and comics in issues, so that way people get more of the comics, because unfortunately it's still the industry standard to judge a comic success on its issue sales, which is silly.
And it's all about that first issue too, right? Once you get them hooked with that first issue, then it's a go from there. You know, that's why I feel. That's how I feel. You know.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I was reading this issue, and then halfway through, I got called to dinner. And I was like, "Sweet dinner!" And then, like later on, I was like, "Oh yeah, I was reading that." And then I guess it was like 2 pages left, and I was like, "Eh."
Yeah. Oh. Someone wants to play Words with Friends. I'm gonna ignore that.
Cool. So while I have you here, I'm just gonna shout out to our next book club. I don't know what we're gonna read yet. My husband suggested that I get people to commit to join the video podcast and then discuss with them and figure out books together. So that way we're all excited about the books. So our next book club for June is going to be we're changing it to the 3rd Tuesday of the month instead of the 4th, so I can go to the Toronto Comic Jam, because I keep missing it because it's tonight. It starts at like 7:30.
Where's it happening this time?
So this time we're doing it June 16th, which is also a Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Awesome.
I mean, there's a couple books I want to read. I bought a bunch of new stuff. And so I kind of want to read them, But we can choose. I got this one tune that looks really good. Nothing Can Possibly Go Wrong by Faith Erin Hicks, who's like super cool.
Oh, nice.
I can't believe I haven't read this one yet. And then I also have this other one, Empowered by Adam Warren.
Empowered. That's Adam Warren?
Warren. Yeah. So those ones look pretty cool, and those are sort of my graphic novel suggestions. Oh, Megan's talking to us in the comments, so I'm just gonna catch up on that. She says issue 2 is the pinch hitter. If there's a huge drop off, it can really hurt, and it's true. A lot of people will buy the first issue, but if they don't buy the second, it could like cancel a series.
That's so true.
So if you like the comic and you want it to continue, you gotta buy them issues. Buy them issues. So these are my ideas for graphic novels for our next book club. But I'm open to ideas on the issues. So if you guys know of a number one or like a new series premiering in June, before I guess the 19th, the 16th. All right. So Joe, while I put this up, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I am an illustrator / comic book artist. I am one half of the creators of Heroes of the World. So myself and my best friend Mark Williams, we created a mega brand where we have heroes represented in different countries around the world. So we have the T-shirts, we have the posters. Actually, I think I have one of the shirts here. Yeah, I do, and it's a new one. Let me grab it. So we finished doing all the heroes of the world. So we're now doing provinces. So we have this awesome little Toronto guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Heroes of Toronto.
I like how you have our Toronto flag in there.
Yeah. See it? And then one of the biggest things that we have is the Heroes of the World comic book. That's it. So nice. It's Heroes of the World, Legends of the Earth Conduit.
Yeah, man, I've read it. It's interesting. You got your main character, Oreo Gaia. Ore. I'm super great at pronouncing names. I've been calling this guy the creator of the Wrenchies because I cannot pronounce his name. It's really complicated, let me say. But just so you guys know, I put up the date for our new book club in my lower thirds. It's Tuesday, June 16th at 7 p.m. If you guys are available and if you guys can commit to reading one graphic novel and one new issue, I would love to have you here in our video broadcast and we could talk about we could talk about comics and stuff. Megan suggests that we read Ghost Racers, which is a sequel series to the Philippe Smith run on Ghost Rider, which is the Ghost Riders on a foreign planet racing to death.
That's that's part of the whole Secret Wars thing that they have going on in Marvel right now.
Oh, so she wants that as a issue. Am I aware of it?
Of like the whole Secret Wars thing that's going on now?
Yeah, I am aware of it. I mean, I'm not going to follow all of it, but I have I got the prequel issue at Free Comic Book Day, and I have the first issue because my friends at Four Color Grails sent it to me, which is super cool. So, but yeah, maybe we'll check out Ghost Racers. It's got a Centaur Ghost Rider, and Megan's super into it. So, and if it's no good, we could just talk about how much we don't like it, and it'll still have a show.
I don't know. I feel like reintroducing the whole Ghost Riders thing, Ghost Racers thing was pretty cool. Like I've seen some of the variant art for it, variant covers for it, and it's interesting to see like the different Ghost Riders. Like there's the one with the car, the original Johnny Blaze, and then you said there was a Centaur one or a Minotaur one. Was it?
Yeah, a Centaur Ghost Rider.
Really?
That's what Megan says.
Yeah.
In the comments, you guys should join us in the YouTube comments during our broadcast. It's super fun. Super fun. Comics that we will read will be announced, but I'm pretty sure I just have to double check that my comic shop can get it. But I'm down with Ghost Racers. I'm open to possibilities. And then I'll just pick one of these three guys, or I'll put up a poll on the Facebook event page, and you guys can vote. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the 3 graphic novels I have are all available in the Toronto Public Library, and there should be digital editions of the new issues, so everyone can have access to them and read them and join us in the book club. So that's it for now. You guys should check out some of the other content on my channel. I had some really cool interviews at TCAF. I talked to Box Brown. I talked to Lucy Nicely. And then coming up this week, my interview with Scott McCloud. Oh my God, guys. I was geeking out the whole time. It was amazing. It was amazing. So yeah, that's coming up on the YouTube channel this week. So you guys should subscribe, check out our Facebook and our Twitter. It's all QCX Show or Quintessential Comics. That's it for now. But thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to discussing more comics with you next month on Quintessential Comics.